Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 164 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is David.
My name is Matthew.
My name is Patrick.
Our last names are How, Stoner, and Nicely. Forgot to say that. And joining us on today's episode, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest all the way from Germany. Corbin has joined us on the show. How's it going, Corbin?
So far, so good. Hello. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Very happy to have you on today's episode. Kind of an interesting way we got the guest this week. We've decided to do a Steam Deck impressions episode. Kind of an episode all about what we think that the Switch Pro could learn from the Steam Deck if ever Nintendo decides to make one of those damn things. And I put out a kind of an open call in a Steam Deck group that we're in on Twitter, and Corbin answered the call. So very much appreciate that, Corbin. I'm looking forward to talking deck with you. We've got a lot more on deck for today's episode as well, including lots of news and rumors. We have some updates on the union situation at Raven Software, kind of the U.S.'s first major gaming union. Saudi Arabia has purchased a major stake in Nintendo. A little bit of PlayStation news. PlayStation Plus has revealed a lot more of its service and much more. But before we get into all that stuff, how we doing, everybody? How have our past couple weeks been? It's been a while since we've all been together.
Mm-hmm. I'm all pretty good here. I've been playing lots of Wii Sports 4 quite a bit. I've been playing soccer, Human, otherwise known as Human Rocket League. Still great, still fun.
Oh yeah, it's my favorite game in that game for sure. Patrick, how are you, man?
I'm fine. We're, I can't remember how this all fits in because we're recording episodes left and right. It feels like not really, but I'm about to go on a trip, and I'm excited about that. But yeah, I'm also going to be like on the road and camping during a lot of summer game announcement stuff. So I will be absent for that.
Yeah,
but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I just got back from a trip myself. A lot has happened since the last time I was on the show. First of all, thanks for holding down the show with just the two of you guys last week. Thought that turned out pretty well. So good job on that one. But yeah, I was in Las Vegas for a friend's wedding, and where I did get COVID-19. So apologies in advance at the beginning of this episode for any brain fog that might come about. I feel like I'm holding it together right now. I'm on some fucking...
You look great.
Thank you. I'm on Mucinex. It really does the skin good. But yeah, no, it was... I don't know. I'm glowing, but I think it's cold sweats. Anyway, yeah, it was a great time. First of all, Matt, I want to let you know I did go to Meow Wolf, the Omega Mart in Las Vegas.
Yes.
Had a great time.
Yes.
Thank you for constantly recommending that.
Oh, I'll never stop. How long were you inside?
I was inside for about 2.5 hours. We did the whole like walk around, like free roam bit. We didn't end up doing like the interactive game portion of it. But it was great. Just like discovering what it had in store and like the whole environmental storytelling. You're right. I think you said this before. That's very much like Myst or one of these kind of like, narrative kind of experiences. So I really enjoyed that. I had a great time.
More of a kind of like a comfortability question of like, it usually takes me 5 or 10 minutes to like get comfortable, like exploring, like going behind counters. Did you find yourself having to like being like, oh, I can go here, or I can open this, or I can touch or grab this?
Yeah, a bit. Yeah. I think it's kind of cool that they start you in the store because you can just pick up everything there. And then there's like 20 different ways you can enter basically into the back half. So that made it like a lot more comfortable. Also, weed is legal in Las Vegas. So I was, my inhibitions were lowered.
Hell yeah.
In that way. There was a pretty cool moment. I will say this, where I was there with Mason and Ashley, a couple friends of ours, friends of mine. And Ashley at one point, like picked up a phone and like dialed the number that was on one of the desk areas in like the corporate office of like the there's like kind of that corporate area.
Mhm.
And she dials, and then there was nobody there, and she puts down the phone, and she turns to us. She's like, nobody picked up, and like as she's saying that, the phone rang again, and it was just like this kind of like horror movie moment where she had to like turn back and pick it up. It was super fun, man.
Yeah,
I had a great time. Yeah.
Yeah, Corbin, or maybe if we have some other listeners, we talk about Meow Wolf a lot, but Meow Wolf is a interactive museum. It's very like it's an art museum that's very Myst-like, where you can explore and touch things and pick up things, and there's puzzles. It's in the one we're talking about is in Las Vegas in the US, and it's like grocery store themed is kind of how it starts out. But it very much encourages you to like play with the things, as opposed to like other museums where you just like look and read. This allows you to look, read, and touch, and maybe you'll feel something.
Yeah, we have something similar here in Munich. It's called the German Museum.
Oh,
They
cool.
have an area where also the kids are like motivated to touch things, especially with those electricity stuff, where they can try out to put in cables and stuff. So I can imagine what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's that, but for grown-ups, and with like a deep lore like that's kind of associated
Maybe
with
like
it as well.
Theater experience a little bit too.
Kinda, yeah. It's really cool. Anyway, how was your past week, Corbin? You having a good time out there in Germany?
Pretty much, yeah. Working normally every day, and after the day, spending time with the family. And every evening, I'm doing this streaming thing on Twitch and playing games.
Yeah,
Showing people how good things work on Linux.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I saw on Twitter you're a developer as well. Is that correct?
Software developer in general.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not
awesome.
doing game development, but it has shifted from doing like C embedded programming to now PHP web development.
Gotcha.
So it shifted a little bit, but at my heart, in the core, I'm a software developer. Yes.
Very good. Very good. Love to hear it.
But real briefly, one of our last episodes was on the Wii U eShop closing, and we got a couple comments on that one. Drew Musel on YouTube, friend Drew, said, not only is Nintendo Land a great party game, but it's really cheap too. So it's a little late to add credit card funds to the Wii U eShop now, but I think there are still workarounds, hopefully, if you want to buy something on there. Also, they shouted out the DS and Wii games on Virtual Console, and in particular Pikmin games, which are difficult and pricey to get physical nowadays. And then over on Facebook, Vincent Goodwin was excited we had Carrie on again as a guest. And then I also wanted to mention, because in scrolling back for comments on things, these are too old. I sort of missed a few comments though. So shout out to Rebleep and Pokemon Jeremy on Twitter and Rebleep on YouTube. I apologize. Y'all had comments on old things that I missed. But we do appreciate hearing from our listeners and viewers. So I will do my best to not ignore you and give you a shout out if you leave a comment or send us a note. And then we also appreciate reviews and sharing the podcast on places like Reddit. And then always remember to like and subscribe on YouTube as well. And yes, we've been away for a couple weeks, so we've got some news to go over, some big ones, starting off with Game Workers Alliance, which is the union that is now official over at the Activision Blizzard subsidiary Raven Software here in the US. They won the union vote that was held, and that means there are now 2 US video game unions. Hopefully this will continue to be like dominoes and more things will happen, and this will be a good thing. But it's good news for workers' rights and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
We'll see what happens as a result of this, but that exists now and is an official union. I don't know if anyone has any comment. I mean, we've talked a lot about this. We have a whole episode if you want to go back and listen to it right before this vote happened. So go check that out as well. Making the news a couple of weeks ago was the fact that Saudi Arabia's like public investment fund, where they use their state money to invest in corporations that are public, has invested in Nintendo, and they own approximately 5% of Nintendo now, which makes them the 5th largest shareholder as well. So, they've apparently been investing in a lot of video game companies, or a handful, like Activision Blizzard, for example, and EA, and some Take-Two, some of the big ones. And I guess SNK, right? Don't they like own?
Yeah, I think they
SNK
have
outright, or
I think
they're the majority stakeholder.
They currently have like 98% stake in SNK, so they are the sole owners of SNK at the moment. Yeah. So, which not like SNK is putting out game after game after game these days, you know what I mean? But still, yeah, it's pretty crazy stuff.
So globalism and capitalism win. I don't know what to say about this. Like I don't know. Yeah, Saudi Arabia, not a great country.
At least the royal family, I would.
Yeah, exactly. like everywhere in the world, they're great people, right? And and leadership, and the U.S. included, not great leadership anywhere in the world, in my opinion. I don't know. I'm rambling about this in a weird roundabout way of just to say that, like, I think the way we have our world organized sucks, and that is all I can say.
Only thing I would say is I agree with you, Patrick, and then kind of discuss some of the what Saudi Arabia is trying to do here. According to this Bloomberg article that we referenced, it's they're trying to build up their own content industry. So they invested in not only Nintendo but other companies like Capcom to make money, obviously, but also kind of get some ideas about content creation, just like other countries are doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. This Saudi public fund is what was it called again?
Public investment fund.
The public investment fund. Yeah, it's interesting how they've got it set up, and this is not, this Nintendo is not the first that they've invested in. You talked about some of them before. They're doing it a lot. It's just interesting to see this country, and specifically MBS, is kind of the whole brainchild behind this public investment fund. And it was like very much just like an effort to get the government into business dealings outside of their own country, right? Which doesn't generally tend to go very well, I think. Like when, because it's all of a sudden kind of people's livelihoods within Saudi Arabia are kind of like tied to the whims and wishes of the marketplace, right? Which never seems like a great idea when you're trying to be a self-sustaining country. But yeah, I mean, I think I also read somewhere that Nintendo is not aware of this at all. And I mean, how could they be? It's, when you're a publicly traded company, anybody can go in and buy stock, right? So apparently the higher ups at Nintendo heard about this in the news whenever it all came out. But yeah, it's definitely not a great thing to see. But I mean, I think that you'll be seeing a lot more and more of this, especially as the markets tend toward speculative markets, as we've been seeing happening more and more recently. Like that's always been happening with the stock market, but then with crypto and everything as well, you're starting to see governments getting into cryptocurrency. I think we're only going to see more and more of this going forward.
Well, yeah, a lot to unpack there, but I guess we'll move on.
Yeah, that is not the whole topic of this episode, although it could be.
So Mario Strikers Battle League, the Nintendo arcade soccer game that's coming out really soon, June 10th, I believe. I actually don't have that in front of me, but they are going to be doing a demo of it. It's called First Kick, I believe, and it's going to be one of these things where you have to download this demo separately, and then over the course of June 3rd through June 5th, just like they've done with some of these demos recently, there are specific times. It's not that whole weekend. It's like an hour here, an hour there. So you're going to have to reference that on the website.
Are you allowed to stream this one?
That's a great question. I actually
you could not do that with Switch Sports.
I don't know. I know that, like they made such a big deal about that in the news when that happened, or people did, that I'm not sure. So it's not It's not been talked about, to my knowledge,
Mhm.
publicly as much, which makes me think that they don't have that caveat in there.
Mhm.
But I don't know. And theoretically, you can download this demo and play the tutorial outside of those hours. But
Have any of y'all played it yet?
I've been meaning to do the tutorial in advance of this episode, but I apologize, I did not get to it.
Okay, so there's a demo outside of the online First Kick experience.
Just the tutorial.
Just the tutorial demo.
The tutorial for the
I had no
demo.
idea. That was totally unclear to me.
Yeah, it's not the clearest way to do all this, maybe, but it is what it is. And then also Nintendo has confirmed that there will be post-launch support for this game in the form of, at the very least, additional characters. So Mario Strikers fans will get Daisy probably, which has been one of the things that's been talked about, that she's been in all the games, but not this one. So
yeah,
we'll see.
You gotta hold something back to keep the players engaged. You know what I mean?
Yeah, as we've learned, that really works with some of their other games. Yeah. We'll see with that. If that game really sparks a competitive competition element, they're striving for it with the sort of FC, with the football club mode. We'll see if that works out. But the most successful competitive Nintendo game of Smash now is going to be having its official, licensed tournaments. Although, we say that, but it's still the case that, like, technically Nintendo is, like, not really a sponsor, co-sponsor, or administrator. Like, the fine print, I guess they're just allowing these to happen or whatever. I guess is what it is. They're licensing the games or whatever. Anyway, Panda is the company that's having these official tournaments, and they're starting very soon in late June, and it's going to be through the rest of the year, with a sort of a big finale at the end of the year in December at various in-person events. This is a North American, I should say, tournament, and it's both Melee and Ultimate, which is cool. And then I guess it's quote unquote over $100,000 with the prize pool being split between winners of Ultimate and Melee. And I don't know how that payout is, for first place, second place, or whatever. I'm sure we could find that out, but that's the way it's being framed.
It's nice to see some official support for Melee, because I feel like for years they just didn't want to even mention it at all. Until it became so big that they couldn't ignore it, I suppose. But this also, like, we talked about this before with them dropping out of Evo, but this has got to be a big reason why, right? Them just kind of doing their own thing that they have a little bit more control over. Yeah.
And Sony owning Evo now.
Well,
and you know who just bought Sony? Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Probably next.
And you know who just bought Saudi Arabia?
Please.
Microsoft.
That
Saudi Arabia is now on Game Pass now. It's day one.
The entire country. Access. One of the stops for this Panda, one of the circuit stops is in San Antonio.
There you go.
September 30th to October 2nd, 2022. Patrick, you want to enter your...
Oh, I'm not that good.
Okay, never mind.
I bet you could win. I bet you could take home $100K.
Yeah, I'm sure. Right.
Yeah.
What is that event in San Antonio called?
It's the Lost Tech City.
I wonder what that is. Like, the broader event or whatever. I'd be curious if it's worth attending. I'll have to look that up.
You're gonna have to go, Pat. You're gonna have to go. You have to represent Switch Headz.
We'll see. I'll look into it.
Some other stops are in Detroit, Miami, a couple in California, Los Angeles, and Atlanta.
Very good.
And then, speaking of Game Pass, its poor substitute on the Switch, Nintendo Switch Online, has added some more games to the
finally again.
Yeah,
finally again. And I don't know if anyone's excited about these ones. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on these. 2 Super Nintendo games and 1 NES game. We've got Congo's Caper, as I think maybe you or somebody else said, the other caveman game, but there are a lot of caveman.
There are
games
like
from
5
this
or
era.
6 Super Nintendo caveman games, at least. Yeah.
Congo's Caper, not one I'm familiar with, and Rival Turf. Another Halico game. I think like every Halico game will be on this service by the end of this. And then for the NES, it's Pinball, one of the sort of black box like Nintendo games.
Pinball is very good. Pinball on the Nintendo Entertainment System. I played quite a bit as a child. Love that game. Gets really intense the later and later you get into that game. So that's actually like a very fun NES game.
Rival Turf, is that like a fighting game or like beat 'em up game?
It's a beat 'em up. Yeah.
I don't remember that. It's just another Final Fight kind of wannabe game. Was it?
All beat 'em ups look the exact same to me. I can't tell them apart. I have no love for the genre. That's, no offense if that's what you're into.
You could just say you don't like them rather than just saying "fuck you" an entire genre of video games.
Look, I know, I understand people are excited for Shredder's Revenge. I don't care. But
David, all you gotta say is, "I'm glad people are excited."
Here, I want to personally shit on all your childhoods. Okay, that's what I really am here for. No, but additionally, I did want to point out that the Caveman game is not in the Japanese drop for this. Japan is getting a game I've never heard of. I'm actually not exactly sure how to pronounce it because I haven't seen it in English. I've just seen the Japanese characters for it. But it's this really charming looking platformer where you play as this like little girl in a backpack, like on her way to school or something. And you're basically like connecting a kind of like swinging cable to different platforms. And then you swing over to these different platforms. It just looks like really interesting platforming gameplay I've never really seen in any other SNES or Super Famicom games. So that was really cool. So I think if you've got the Nintendo Switch Online app from the Japanese store, which is really easy to grab, I would recommend checking that game out. It looks very unique and super fun. And I wish we would just get these Japanese exclusive games added to the American one as well.
Yeah, with some caveat that says this is just in Japanese.
Yeah,
sorry,
a
you know what I
warning.
mean? Like, like you're not going to be able to read this, but you could try it if you want.
Yeah.
Does this count as a fishing game?
No.
Well, she's got the little hook and she catches fish and puts them in her backpack.
Does she catch fish?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that. I just saw her latching onto platforms.
Umihara Kawase?
I have to admit, though, even though I have the Nintendo Online subscription, even with the additional one, I was a little bit excited about the Sega Master System, but to be honest, it turned out I only played one game out of that, and that was the Super Probotector one. No, how's it called? Super Contra? Something.
Oh, yeah.
In Germany, the Contra series was renamed to Probotector because how's it called? Peggy is what you know? Yeah, for us, it's the USK. And they were totally against anything where people are shooting each other, and that's why they replaced all the people with robots and the bad people with robots, even with aliens. Sorry, with aliens. So the good people are robots, and the bad people are aliens. And then it was called Probotector. Yeah, and I played only the Super Contra one on the Sega Master System, and none of the others, not even Sonic.
Right.
The German, whatever you call it, the German review board is pretty intense, right? Like, are they
not anymore though?
They used to be.
Yeah, in the beginning, you didn't get all of the cool games, to be honest.
Yeah, like GoldenEye was banned, correct?
Yeah.
Like, if I understand that correctly. Yeah.
But it changed a lot. And now it's like, even you can have the swastika in games if it's not like a propagation. So it's not like advertising it, but it's in a historical context, then it's fine even.
So Wolfenstein is back on the table then.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even though they did a pretty good job with those games when they knew they were not able to release them in Germany, and they created then different signs or so. So it didn't change the game kind of at all. It just renamed the things.
Right.
But nevertheless, you had a German version and you had a non-German version. And when you had like games that were able to do multiplayer, of course, you were not able to play together with other people out of Germany then, which is a little bit stupid. But that has changed now. It's like I haven't seen a game getting like not released anymore in Germany since the recent, I don't know, 5 years even already. So it changed. The zombie has arrived in the middle of society, they say.
Moving on then, there, as you may recall, Nintendo / the Pokemon Company put up the Pokemon Diamond and Pearl soundtrack online on its own website in a random sort of thing that happened. Sort of related to the remake, though it's the original music. And it was open source, I believe. They were going to allow you to use this music for whatever you wanted, if I'm correct. And then, but now they are going to be shutting that down. So they're pulling that website, and I think by the time you see this, it'll be gone. Yeah,
I think it's gone by the time this episode comes out already. Yeah. Anybody have any fucking idea why they're doing this? This weird. Makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it's I like, video game music is always in that weird licensing place because I think some of it's own, depends on the deal, but a lot of it's owned by the composers and all that. So you think it'd be that, but they put this out and said, do what you want with it. And then pull. That's what's weird about it to me.
Right.
I don't know.
So it was from the official creators?
It was the Pokemon Company that put it up. Yeah. Yeah. But it had a Creative Commons license, right? Like you could use it as long as you're not making money off of it.
The only thing I know is that if somebody like fans, if they do some fan service of a game, like a remake or whatever, and that is using some parts of the brand and the company is not intervening within a certain time frame, then they might lose the right on it. But I mean, if this is from the creators themselves, okay, that's weird.
Yeah.
So this came out in January, right? The sound library.
Yeah, January or February.
Okay, so my the reason why I'm asking is it probably came out in support of Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl,
sort of
as means to like market it. And then Corbin, what you're saying about maybe providing these assets to content creators to use them to support the release of Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. But now that release window is closing, these assets are also going away, and probably maybe we see this for another remake Pokemon or something like that.
We'll see, man.
That's my guess.
What I'm worried about is that they're going to be like, oh, hey, we decided that actually if you use these in your YouTube videos, it's now a copyright claim again.
Oh, yeah,
and
totally.
They're just going to like strike all these channels that like put this music in good faith, and now they've said they're not going to do that. They said that as long as you're still within the guidelines of the terms and conditions or whatever. Right. So it should be fine, I guess. I don't know, but it's like either way. I think it was Kotaku who wrote an article about this. They put it really well. They think somebody at Nintendo realized that people were having fun without being charged $59.99 first, and so they quickly undid their decision. But either way, it's very. I can't really think of a good reason why they would do this after having put it up. But if you have any insight into this, please shoot us an email, superswitchheads@gmail.com.
Well, we've got a couple of PlayStation news items we want to talk about. As David mentioned at the top, the PlayStation Plus revamp, big changes have started to roll out, I think, in different parts of the world. And so as that has happened, a little bit of there's been a little bit of pushback about some of it and what the pricing and in terms of like buying, which we've talked about a little bit, right? Like, can you buy things and then use them on this new service, old cards and that kind of stuff, and they're only allowing it to be of equal value, if that makes any sense as I'm trying to explain this. And I think certain places you can only stream things, but that's not possible in certain parts of the world. So as this is kind of rolled out, it's just seemed messy and confusing, and it's been confusing to me the whole time with all the tiers and what it means and that sort of thing. But it's happening now.
So the here. PlayStation Plus is also a streaming service like what you can have with the Xbox Game Pass?
Yeah, they've changed it to to be like that, more like that, though not quite the same, right? Can anybody explain this?
They basically combined their PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Now subscription services into one. But then within it, there's like, you could still just have it be PlayStation Plus, but I don't think you can just have PlayStation Now anymore. I think now it's like, there's kind of like the base
Tier
PlayStation
system.
Plus, and then kind of this sort of expanded PlayStation Now thing in the middle. And then the highest tier includes more classic games from like PS1 and PS2 and stuff like that.
So the PlayStation Now was the streaming service in the beginning, right?
Right. And a lot of these games don't require them to be streamed. I think the only games that you have to stream are PlayStation 3 games, because the PlayStation 3 had like kind of a crazy architecture compared to the other systems that they've done. And they just don't want to be bothered to figure out how to get a PlayStation 3 emulator working on the PS5, which can't be that hard, right? I mean, I'm sure it's hard, but
must be hard enough for them not to want to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it's definitely on top of the whole rollout happening and on top of the confusion with everything and kind of whether or not it's worth the highest tier for the subscription service. There's also a lot coming out about how the emulation is and no offense here, Corbin, but running on PAL versions of the game, which, are obviously at 50 hertz. And a lot of the games back then, they didn't want to create 50 hertz versions, so they just slowed the games down. So now that everybody's using NTSC at 60 hertz, it just means that it's subpar emulation. And this is the same stuff that PlayStation was getting shit for back when they did the PlayStation Classic and that whole mini console. And so it's like, it's stuff that you really think they would have figured out by now. So it certainly seems like it's probably worth holding off at this point, at least as far as I'm concerned. But also, it begs the question on how many subscription services are we going to realistically subscribe to these days?
I have enough already.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It has been said that they will be adding games at a pretty consistent clip. So maybe at some point it'll be worth it down the line. But at the moment, I would suggest holding off.
One thing that's not happening with this service at any tier, I believe, is like brand new games. You don't get like Game Pass. You don't get that. So that's another reason to potentially hold off. But we will be hearing potentially about some of these, big tentpole PlayStation games at a State of Play that's been announced. That's going to be happening very soon after this podcast comes out on Thursday, June 2nd at 5:00 Central US time. So they specifically mentioned PSVR 2 games. So maybe they will actually talk about that hardware and its release. We'll see. But State of Play happening. Feels like that's going to be the beginning of a lot of announcements that are going to be following in the weeks to come.
You a VR guy, Corbin?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So is Matt.
Yeah, very much so.
Where should I start?
Do you have an index too?
Yes. I was starting with the HTC Vive because that's the first one that was supported officially on Linux. And even if you had problems and you wanted to get support from HTC, they said you had to create a Windows report, which is not really possible for guys who are not using Microsoft Windows. But with the Valve Index, you have like first-party support from Valve, and I have used it already. I broke my controllers, my knuckles. I broke my index cable. You know Beat Saber, right? I mean, if you're you know Beat Saber. And clapping the controllers. And the index controllers have a metal ring.
Right.
And if you smack them together, you can totally break things. So with my second pair that I got, I mean, there was like no discussion from Valve. I told them, there was below the trigger, the plastic broke. And on the one trigger, the analog stick popped off. I don't know why that happened, but maybe too much of velocity or so. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was able to put it back on again and it did work, but still, I mean, it's not how it should be. And there was like no discussion. They exchanged it. And then I made some 3D, not by myself printed, but 3D printed bumpers around the metal rings. And a tennis grip around the grip itself. So the sweat is not going too much onto it. And that helps a lot, keeping them brand new. There's nothing on them now. So when I'm clapping, it doesn't hurt that much if I hit my fingers or thumb. And it doesn't break the things anymore that hard. So I learned my lesson.
There are some people that modify cars, but here we modify our VR controllers.
It's just for protection.
Yes, I love it. Yeah. I've hurt myself plenty of times while playing on the Valve Index. I punched walls or desks. Or myself.
Yeah.
I was playing Batman Arkham VR, and there you can throw a batarang, and I was smashing my ceiling lights.
I know exactly what that feels like.
I'm interested to see what PlayStation's gonna bring, right? I mean, I feel like when the PlayStation VR originally came out, really the only thing on the market was the Oculus Rift, right? And it was, I mean, the major player on the market really was the Oculus Rift. And so I think now with a lot of, not only the Valve Index and a lot more consumer releases for VR, you also have the Oculus, or excuse me, I guess it's MetaQuest now, right? To compete with, right? And that's like a much more svelte system, a lot more portable. So I'm interested to see how PlayStation adapts to kind of all the different competitors that now fill the market.
Yeah, interesting is that here in Germany, we probably won't have access to any of the Meta VR headsets anymore because they left the market. Facebook wasn't
that's right,
willing to apply the German data protection rules, and they said like, okay, then we don't need that market. Bye-bye.
You're probably better off, to be honest.
Wow.
Yes, we kind of probably
Does
are.
Germany have like stronger data protection laws like GDPR?
How they do the implementation of the GDPR is a little bit stronger than in other countries, and Facebook didn't fit into those rules, and the country said, yeah, you can adapt, and Facebook said no. Apparently it's not worth for the market is not worth it if they can't get the data.
Some of that might change whenever Saudi Arabia buys Germany. We'll just have to wait and see.
Still talking on this subject, it will be interesting. I was just looking at some data of Oculus or Meta Oculus has sold 3 times as much as the original PSVR. So with the install base of what PlayStation 5 has now, I hope this is popular. I think VR is more popular than ever. People are talking about it or wanting to experience it. It could be an additional accessory that people pick up during the holiday season based on when Sony releases this thing.
It seems like a hard sell to me to sell more hardware. That's what's tough about it. You've already got to get people to buy your PlayStation 5, and then you've got to get them to buy the VR headset. And
you have to find them first.
It's already hard. So we'll see. But speaking of that, that's our last news item. Here is kind of about new tech, which leads us into our main topic, and that's that there's been a lot of rumors of a PlayStation 5 Pro or whatever it would be called, and sort of a mid-gen refresh of the Xbox as well. Neither of which are confirmed things. It was just sort of some event that was held by some Polish news site where there was some sort of slide or something about this that got everybody talking about it. So there's whether or not it's happening, there's no official word on this. It just made everybody pissed off because of, I think, how hard it is to find these things and how new they are, that there's this talk about some updated version already. So no need to get the pitchforks out until it's official, I guess. But at the same time, maybe do you think this makes these companies, if they are thinking about it, back off, or is this just a loud minority?
Of the pitchfork wielders. That just everyone. Gamers are gonna be pissed about anything, so I don't think that any of these companies really care what anybody screams about, right?
Yeah.
But also this seems kind of like non-news to me. I mean, I think it would be news if they're like, hey, there's a Pro coming out and it's coming out at the end of 2022 or something like that, right? That would be very fast, and I think that people would be justifiably angry about that. But I think of course there's going to be a pro version in development, right? Like, I think that there's been a Switch Pro in development for all this time, even though there keep being rumors about it. We never end up seeing it, right? I just think this is basically the news here is that R&D teams within these companies are researching and developing, and so it's like, yeah, of course they are.
How dare they do their job?
Right, exactly. Now the question is when do you do this, right? Because it's obviously there. All the forecasts for this chip shortage and supply constraints and all this kind of stuff that's hitting the entire tech industry is forecasted to go out to 2024 or something like that, right? At least. So it's like, are they really ready to abandon the current models, the factory models that they're making of these systems right now and move on to these new ones? Is that going to be worth it for them? Like when do you make this go out, right? Because it's not, because everybody in the industry right now is vying for chips, right? Like they're all kind of like trying to get the components that they need to put this hardware out at the moment. So it's just like where you're going to pick your battle, right? Like, I think that at the moment they have no problem selling through their stock of PlayStation 5s, right? So just keep doing that. I mean, Microsoft, we're finally seeing Xbox Series X's in stores, right? We've been able to find Series S's in retail for a while now, but you're finally getting to the point where you're seeing the X, right? So I could see maybe Microsoft hitting this a little bit earlier than PlayStation, but either way, I think that this is an inevitability. It just comes down to when.
Unless there's anything else on that, I think that's it for our news section. We're going to be talking more about new tech, in particular the Steam Deck, which is rolling out too slowly for some folks, I'm sure. But at least a couple people here have one in their hands. So we're going to talk about, impressions of the Steam Deck and what we, and I mean everybody but me, likes about it and doesn't like about it maybe after this short break. We are back, and this week we are talking about the Steam Deck. It has come out to some consumers, and the early waves at least, and 3 out of the 4 of us here have tried it out. And so we're going to be given impressions of it so far. Maybe we'll start with just sort of general impressions and what, people think about it, and then we're gonna hit some specific topics and end with talking about sort of comparing it with the Switch and maybe lessons the Switch could learn from the Steam Deck and that sort of thing. But just sort of high level stuff. What do y'all think of it after having used it?
I love it. I totally love it. Well, I'm a Linux guy, and that's why I was interested in this device from the beginning when I heard about it. I mean, regarding the Linux gaming, it has come a so long way. And it now all like emerges into the Steam Deck. And what Valve has done in the recent years to push gaming on Linux on the PC. And then we were all thinking about, why do they do this? Okay, they were a little bit scared from Microsoft with the Windows 8 App Store, I think it was, where they tried to force them, like Apple, you have to go through our store to deploy your software and you have to pay a fee for that. And I think that was around the time where Valve got thinking, hey, do we want to do that? Do we want to have that share? And we don't want to share the share or whatever. And there, I think it started, and that's quite a few years ago. Back then, when I was playing on PC, I was trying to play already because I was fascinated by Linux from the beginning, the open source thoughts and the community and what is behind it and stuff. That are kind of values that I can identify myself with. It's interesting, it's fun to explore and have it all open and stuff. So I was trying to do all the things I could on Linux already back then. But what was not always possible was gaming. So I was dual booting a lot. And at that time when Valve was announcing the, I think it was called Steam Universe, where they announced the Steam Link, the Steam VR headset, the Steam controller, and the Steam machines. And the Steam machines should have been already Linux gaming machines. but they kind of failed because there were not that many games available.
It wasn't super unified too, right? It was like kind of amongst several different boxes for the Steam machines, right? I think that might have also been why they failed.
They didn't produce them themselves. They didn't have the experience to create hardware. So for the VR headset, they reached out to HTC. And then they had the HTC Vive as the first Steam VR headset that was supported on Linux from the beginning as well. Where they started to learn to make hardware was the Steam Link and the Steam controller. But the Steam machines themselves, and they were, I think, only allowed to be called Steam machines if they were shipping with the Steam controller. Any company could have done that who was agreeing to ship a Steam controller and ship Steam OS with it. And SteamOS was already the try to have a console-like PC where you just put it onto your living room television, boot it up, and it behaves like a console. You have the Steam Big Picture mode. I think it was even the normal PC Big Picture mode back then, so there was no difference to the desktop PC Steam Big Picture mode. But the games you could play on those Steam machines, they had to have Steam OS on it, which was a Linux fork from Debian back then. There were not that many games. There have been some cool ones, some AAA ones, a lot of indie games, but not the majority. And that's why I think they failed. So Valve was probably thinking about what can we do about it, and there have been thoughts already. Like, maybe do it with Wine or so, but then the hardcore Linux community was like, no, we want native games. We don't want to use a compatibility layer. Compatibility layer is the word for it, right? Because Wine is an acronym for Wine is not an emulator. And that's true. It's not emulating. It's just translating one thing to the other, but it's in fact the same thing. It's not emulating, it's just translating. And that's why it's called a compatibility layer in Steam now.
Right.
And
like John Carmack back then, he already said, the better Linux is nice and stuff, cool technology, but to get the majority of people over, it would be better to put the effort into the Wine compatibility layer. And he said that even before Proton was a thing. And every Linux gamer was like, no, we don't want this. And they did this, and it was the best thing that could happen. 2018, Valve released the first version of Proton. And since then, I have stopped dual booting. I stopped playing all those games that were before only working on Windows. And if there was a multiplayer game that didn't work, I didn't play it. So since 2018, I've not booted Windows except updates, I think.
To be clear to everybody, like SteamOS is a Linux-based operating system, and that's what the Steam Deck runs on. In case that's not obvious by now.
And I think that it fits really well because, like you were saying, Corbin, it very much I think came out of not wanting to be muscled by Microsoft too much for their storefront, right? But the more I think about it, the more Linux is a great fit for Valve as a company, right? Because I think like from the beginning, Valve has been very, very community focused, very focused on, Counter-Strike is a mod originally, right? And it's like they've always supported mod developers and people who like to tinker. And obviously Linux very much fits into that whole kind of mindset as well. And so I think it works great. And Proton blows me away, to be honest. They've got on the Steam Deck, obviously there's this whole deck verified kind of moniker and label that they'll put on games that are verified to work well on Proton, like games for Windows that don't have native Linux builds that can just work through the compatibility layer. And I'm constantly blown away by all the games that are in my Steam library that have not been officially verified that just work, right? And they just work right off the bat. And it's old stuff too, like stuff you wouldn't think would have any sort of compatibility whatsoever. Like one of my most played games on my Steam Deck right now, for better or for worse, is Bejeweled 3. A game that, like, I don't know. I love match 3 puzzle games. Okay, sue me. But it's like,
I'll see you in court, buddy.
Yeah, right. No, but it's like, but that's a game that is not built for controller whatsoever. It's made for mouse and keyboard, but it's like, I use a community control method of using the touchpad as a mouse, and then emulating moving left or right with the mouse with a click on the D-pad or the stick, and stuff like that. It's stuff like that is not officially supported, but just ends up working great, right? And I'm pretty blown away by it. I do wonder what the Linux community thinks about with Proton being such an incredible tool. I wonder if there are people within the Linux community that are kind of miffed that this just means that developers aren't going to make Linux native versions of their games anymore.
So before I get into that, I want to say one or two other things first. How this all evolved into the Steam Deck, because we said already before they had the Steam controller.
Right.
And the Steam controller did have a very special thing, those touchpads.
Right.
And they even had then statistics showing up how many people are using the Steam controller, and it hadn't been many. And just recently I heard the theory that it's because it's missing the second analog stick. And I could imagine that that's true, even though the touchpads can be used as analog sticks. But this evolved now. The Steam, I mean, they were thinking about the Steam controller version 2 probably. I think we have seen patents going on the internet around. But this probably evolved into the Steam Deck now.
Right.
So that's one thing. Then the other thing is we named it Proton already, or we said the name Proton already, but we didn't say that Proton is a Valve-maintained Wine fork. So Wine is that thing that takes care to run Windows binaries on Linux. So through the compatibility layer, but it's integrated into Steam in the Steam client. So it works out of the box. You don't have to do anything. So it's very like transparent for the user. He just clicks install and play in the best case. So Proton has then evolved, and with every version, more and more games have been working. So what you now said, that there are now games that are working with the input method on the Steam Deck. That started with the Steam controller, where they added the possibility to create those community profiles. So if they hadn't gone through all those hoops already that have now evolved into the Steam Deck, we wouldn't be there where we are now. It's so incredible. And I mean, that those games are working on the Steam Deck, okay, that's the effort of Proton, because it looks so it can run all the Windows games. And to be fair, I think there are barely exceptions now, except there is some special thing like Easy Anti-Cheat, which is then maintained on the server side.
Right.
And then the client cannot communicate to that because the server says, okay, we detect this is not Windows, and then we block it or something like that. But even that's changing now. But this is how it all evolved with the community profiles to make it work on the Steam Deck. And this is so incredible.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really cool to see.
And the question you were asking, if there are people that are miffed about, yes, there have been. But I think they are rethinking it, because it's even Valve said that. So we want now to show you our newest device, which is the Steam Deck, and we will show you how this works through our compatibility layer with Proton, so developers don't have to put any effort, in the best case, into it to make it run on the Steam Deck. But so we don't mind if you have a native Linux version. We would prefer that, but it's not necessary. And we will come to that back later. There was a sentence from, I think, Pierre-Loup Greffet, who is like the main Linux guy in the Valve department for that. So I think that if Valve really manages to establish Linux or SteamOS as a gaming operating system, and more people are looking into it, so we see the statistics are slowly but steadily rising. We have now, like on Steam, the Steam hardware survey, I think we are mostly above 1% now, while we've been before below 1%. And that magical line of 1%, having that steadily over it, it might then show to developers, hey, maybe we want to do first-party support. And then, in the end, we might get more native ports again. At the moment, it's not looking like that. Indie developers still do it. because the engines can do it, and it's not much effort. The AAA titles is a little bit different because they are using way more stuff the engine provides and getting everything with that, create a native Linux version and it all works out of the box. That's mostly not the case. It works often enough for those little indie titles. And that's why they have still often native Linux titles. But the AAA ones don't do it because it's too complicated. You have to have a QA process. You have to officially support it then, which costs money. But if Valve has done all the heavy lifting already and it's working like out of the box, I don't mind.
Yeah, it is remarkable. It's like it's just like it's like the thing where you've got a problem and then you have a solution and you just barrel towards the solution no matter what the cost. And it's like, sure, it might be messy having all these compatibility layers, and you open up the specifics within the Steam Deck, and and there's like 10 different versions of Proton. Usually the latest ones all just kind of work, but it's like as long as the end result is the same, it gets the job done, right? And I think that, and like I'm sure we'll get to here in a second, they're putting out update after update after update, and they're really listening to the community, and they're really giving a lot of feedback based on community recommendations, and it's really, really something to see. And I'd love to see more of the big gaming companies take this kind of mindset going forward. It's pretty cool.
Just to like recap what we've been kind of talking about, just a little bit. If you're listening to this, you're probably asking, I don't know, maybe the Steam Deck is or isn't for me. What we're trying to discuss is like, it is such out of the box experience that you expect from other console manufacturers that you haven't gotten before. It's only this, what Steam Deck is, that how it exists today was usually a tinkerer's hardware. You had to like tinker and play and like add stuff to it. You can still do those things, but it still provides a seamless and in some cases a frictionless experience that you expect, or that the average user expects.
Merging those two worlds a little bit.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then like we were just talking about compatibility, but for like the average user, I brought my Steam Deck to work, and a lot of coworkers were asking me about it, and that the number one question was, will it play this game? Why or why not? Can I play this game? How do I check? And if you're an average user, all you want to do is play the games, and if you hit like 3 or 4 no's, you're probably just going to like give up and either get rid of it. But kind of what you're saying, Corbin, is the compatibility layers creates this seamless experience where these games that you want to play and expect to play, but and what David said is where it's not yet Steam verified, but the software and the layers are so good that it still plays pretty well and doesn't create the frustration that many users maybe have gotten before.
Sure. And I do want to say, though, I mean, it's not perfect, right? I mean, there are a lot of games that are unsupported, right? And some games just won't run no matter what version of Proton you throw at it, right? And that's frustrating when that happens, right? But it's like, you look at something like the Switch when it came out in its first, 6 months. Now the Switch has a massive library on the eShop. Like, it's one of the biggest gaming libraries ever as far as console games are concerned, but it doesn't hold a candle to Steam, like the massive libraries on Steam. There's like, hundreds of thousands of games on Steam, right? And so it's like, so just the sheer number of games that were playable right out of the box. Like the day I got my Steam Deck, I installed and was playing like 20 games within 10 minutes, like it was like so fast and incredible. And of course not everything is supported, but every day that goes by, more and more and more are getting to that point. Right. And it's really cool. It's really something to see.
If you're getting your Steam Deck now, you have a library of playable or even verified titles of 3,000 titles now. I think they passed
so
the
many
3,000 mark.
Yeah.
And no console at launch or within like how long is it out now? 3 months?
It's not even out for most people.
Yeah, but
It's
since it's
February,
available at
late
all.
February. Yeah.
Yeah.
But having and even there it has been 1,000 already. So in the
Right.
next, so they're like verifying or testing games en masse. It's incredible how many games they test. And what I like to do is testing those games that have the unsupported mark.
Yeah.
And see if they still work. So for example,
that's fun.
I've gotten for the Nintendo Switch Starlink Battle for Atlas because I'm a space game fan, and I even got all the physical ones here.
Yeah,
I love
got
them.
an
My
R-Wing
little son
anyway.
as well. I enjoy them a lot. And that game is also available on PC, but it got the unsupported mark on the Steam Deck. But it can be running, you just need to know how. And the thing that's missing is, and that's even a thing on a Windows PC, they removed the Uplay installer because it's a Uplay game and you need to have Uplay. But with a recent update, probably because the version they were shipping with it was too old and they didn't update it, and they think probably on PC they will have Uplay already installed. We don't need to ship that anymore. So, but if you don't have that installed, you can't play the game. If you start the game, it will say missing Uplay. But on the Steam Deck, you can tinker with it. You can switch to the desktop mode, and we will talk about that probably in a bit. And there are some tools to get that game, to get Uplay installed for that game, and then you can play it. And it works out of the box, and it works beautifully. The performance is good. And it has been a controller game, like a console game before. It's available on Xbox, on PlayStation, and on the Nintendo Switch. So the controls for the Steam Deck are already fitting, and you can play it. It should be a verified title if that one thing wouldn't be missing. But tinkering around and getting those games to work, that's the most fun for guys like me.
Yeah. And I enjoy that as well. It's kind of a game in and of itself to kind of figure that out. I think another example of that, of an unsupported game, like one that Valve officially says, this doesn't work on Steam Deck, is Tabletop Simulator, right? My brother bought me a copy of Tabletop Simulator because he wanted to play there are some card games that we like to play, and he wanted to play over long distance. And that game, it says it's unsupported, but you really just have to get creative with mapping controls, right? It's like, and that game is it's like a platform for all these different kinds of tabletop games that you can play, right? So as long as you're setting in the like custom control options that they have built into SteamOS, all the stuff you're going to need for whatever specific game you're playing, you can get it to work. And I mean, you can do really robust stuff, like have the left trackpad bring up a radial menu that will then let you select different key binding controls, right? So all these specific things that you would need a keyboard for, you can make to your own liking. Now, they're not going to say that that's verified, because for the layman, they're going to pick it up and be like, oh, this doesn't work, and then put it down and be like, I want my money back. You know what I mean? But it's like, for people that are okay with going under the hood a little bit and tinkering around, even these games that they say don't work on the Steam Deck totally do. It's not necessarily a compatibility thing, but rather an input method thing, right? And so I love figuring that stuff out. And whenever you do, you feel like really, really smart,
Now you know the feeling of a Linux user when he first gets into it.
Yeah, right. I'm totally coming around.
The suffering pays off.
Yeah.
I think that's my whole thing of if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably, I would assume, we don't have market surveys on our audience, but I would assume you're probably into tinkering with stuff, or you are into going really deep on a Nintendo franchise or a Mario Kart or Smash. So you are likely the type of person who would enjoy getting, Starlink Battle of Atlas to play on your Steam Deck. However, if you're even just
casual
tinkerer, it's probably still for you. If you are, I want something to work, and I don't want to do tinkering, I just want to play all my Steam games. It's not going to play all your goddamn Steam games. It's going to play a good majority of them, but also consider that.
Yeah.
It depends, though. If you are at home playing, because I think one of the use cases of the Steam Deck is, I'm too lazy to go to the desktop PC and sit on the desk. I want to play on my couch now. And then you still can use your desktop PC and use the Steam Remote Play to play on the screen of the Steam Deck with the controls of the Steam Deck, but it's streamed the image from, and like the input is sent to your PC, but the image is then streamed to your Steam Deck if you have fast enough Wi-Fi, like 5G or so. The 5 gigahertz network, if you have that at home, then it works pretty fine because they optimized the experience for the remote play together, and I think it's called remote play in general now, where you can like even play over the internet if you have a good connection at home, and the latency is not that bad often. It's pretty good over the internet even, and then you can play on the road or whatever. You just need the internet connection to your home PC, and then you can play from your Windows PC, and there all games are working. Because I think if you send in a game to Valve, I think there is in their agreement, you have to have a Windows version. So I hope that changes at some point. So it's enough to have. Okay, but that's a different topic. But as the Windows games are all working, you can still play them and use the inputs and the screen of your Steam Deck, and it would work as well. So if you don't want to have them offline locally or so.
Well, that's an interesting, like, I think that would lead us into the Switch sort of discussion, but maybe there's a few things we could hit before then of like one big possible use case for this Steam Deck as well is emulation. And I'd love to hear y'all talk a little bit about, you know, your experience, or if you have any, with emulators and how well they work, or how hard it is to get them running on the Steam Deck, or how easy.
Sure. Yeah. Corbin, this will be news to you. So I had a Steam Deck. So I sold my Steam Deck because I identified that it wasn't. I sold it to a community member. So he's right here. It's so I was more than happy to give it a good home. But like the emulation on this, so I sold it because I just identified I don't think I would use it, and I'm generally trying to get rid of things that I don't use or don't want to tinker with. It just, I don't want it haunting me. So with the emulation, which is the primary motivator for me to purchase a Steam Deck, I want to play all of the games, all of the classic games from PS2 to the beginning of gaming. So I can, if I wanted to play, Lord of the Rings 2 Towers on PlayStation 2, I could play that. If I wanted to play Geist on GameCube, I could just load up my Steam Deck and play these old games. That is like the freedom of that makes me so happy to think about having something centralized. Yet it does require a little bit of a tinkering spirit to understand how the emulators work, how to configure them to what you want. There are several steps that make the process pretty seamless and easy.
Oh, yeah. EmuDeck is incredible.
If you just want to do it. If you want to add different shaders to make things look like arcade screens or old CRT monitors, it's all there. For me, there's a main reason that I purchased a Steam Deck, and emulation on the Steam Deck is like a fucking dream come true at school.
It is a beast. It's like, just have, because I feel like the past 5 years has seen a huge boom in handheld emulation devices, right? A lot of them coming out of China, a lot of them running Linux, right? Or their own versions of Linux, that backends that are kind of built for these little handheld emulators. But it's like just the sheer amount of stuff you can do on the Steam Deck just because of the raw horsepower under the hood in this thing is amazing. Like you can do up to PlayStation 3 on this thing. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend playing PlayStation 3 on the Steam Deck. I mean, a lot of games are not going to run nearly full speed. But just the fact that you can go all the way from NES up to PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 3 is pretty amazing. I know for me personally, like I've been playing a lot of just Steam games, and not just Steam games, but like third-party games, like a lot of games that I download off itch.io. If they have native Linux versions, I add those as non-Steam games, right? And that's been really a great use case for it. But GameCube emulation, I've been playing so much of on the Steam Deck. I'm a big Super Monkey Ball fan. I'm a big F-Zero fan. Basically an Amusement Vision fan, I suppose. But all those games run great, right? And I think it's Well, yes, there is a little bit of friction and a little bit of under the hood stuff that you need to do, especially when you're in desktop mode, in order to get these things running. Within really like 2 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks of the Steam Deck being out to the very first people that ordered them, there were tools made by the community that automate that entire process, right? Of installing all these emulators. All you really have to do is just put your ROMs into a folder, right? Or put your BIOS files into a folder. But the rest of it's kind of all just done for you, right? And in a really flashy front end. And I don't even really like having all the stuff show up in my Steam library as is. I just like having everything within Emulation Station, right? Like its own little app that I can open up to run all my emulators, right? And so I think as far as I'm concerned, as somebody who has messed around a lot with systems and somebody who likes to modify systems, like I modified my Wii back in the day, my Xbox Series S, I have like developer mode unlocked so I can run emulators on that. I don't think I'm ever going to touch that again now that I have a Steam Deck, because it's like, it just does everything my Xbox does and even better, right? And it's more community supported. And I think the levels of friction are a lot less than you would think, as long as you know where to look, right? As long as you go to these online resources and stuff like that.
Well, that's a question I have, which is like, we're talking about that maybe it's not the easiest thing in the world, but isn't that just true of trying to do emulation, period? Like, I mean? Or is it not any harder here, is it?
Yeah, and I mean, at the very least, if you want to RetroArch is on Steam. Like you can download RetroArch through Steam. So if you want an even simpler process, it's there, right? All you got to do then is throw your ROMs onto the SD card and tell it where to go, right? But it's all pretty basic, to be honest. And as somebody who's done console mods, but I'm not like a hardware guy, just on the software end, this is one of the easiest ways in order to get emulation running that you need. And a lot of stuff you would have to do kind of dubious methods in order to jailbreak your device or something like that. There's no need to do that whatsoever on Steam Deck, because it just is a Linux PC, right? It just has all that available right off the box. So if you're just looking for an emulation machine, then the Steam Deck might be a bit more expensive than you need for something like this. There are a lot of handhelds that are made specifically for that, especially ones that run Android, that are going to be a lot cheaper in the $200 range or something like that, right? But if you're looking to do emulation and all this other stuff that the Steam Deck has to offer, it's a really, really great value for what you're getting.
That's what Valve has been open about from the beginning. They have been open about the system. Due to it being a Linux device, it is open per se. You can do, the hardware is open. Now you can get all the things, most of the things, even on ifixit.com.
Right.
Where you can get all the repairs. I think there are only a few parts missing. And if those things are available to order, I think you can even build your own Steam Deck just of the parts of it.
Yeah.
So Valve has been from the beginning open about this device, which is amazing. They have even shared the CAD files for the housing. So
and I remember your own case. Yeah.
And I remember other companies were like, no, you are not allowed to create a mock-up of our device. No, we will sue you or so. And Valve's like, okay, here, have it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And that shows how it could also work, and it's still successful. I think in the if you look at the Steam top seller weekly top seller charts, the Steam Deck is always inside there. So they're still selling the device. And I think, how is it counted? I think the paid things are listed there. It's not the reservations that you see there, than the ones where people are finalizing their orders.
Right.
So everybody who got their order is getting it, something like that.
I'll end up canceling mine because I got Matt's, but yeah.
But maybe you got a friend that needs it. Yeah, I don't know.
That's right. Maybe I'll get. Yeah, maybe it'll be a very expensive gift.
Yeah. Well, I meant more like that wants to pay you to get it.
I'm joking. Yeah.
I do have a question. One of the sort of outside perspective, big questions is, what about the battery life on this thing? When it sounds like it can do all this stuff and it's big and beefy. How has your experience been with playing it in terms of how long it lasts? Is that presented an issue or no?
Yeah,
it depends on what game you play. They have something cool that is under the hood, it's a Mango Hut overlay. And if you hit the activities button, that are the 3 dots here on the side of the Steam Deck, when you hit that button, you have the possibility to enable an overlay that has different states of how's that called? The verbose mode. You can have several steps. So the first mode is only showing the FPS counter, for example. The second one shows the frame rate, as well as which version is used of the overlay. And it also shows the battery life as well as the battery consumption. And that's why they have also enabled to limit the frame rate. And this is now a little bit how it works under the hood. They have a compositor, it's called. That's what the game is seeing as a screen. And that is especially made for Linux. It's called GameScope. You can run that on your PC as well, at least if you have AMD cards. It's not running fully on NVIDIA cards yet, but they're working on that because NVIDIA is open sourcing parts of the driver as well. So GameScope is the magic thing where what the game is seeing with the resolution and stuff and does not see anything else. And in that overlay, it also shows how much battery it's consuming, and the GameScope compositor is capable of limiting the frame rate. Yep. You can set it down. You can now, with the latest update, you can have it unlimited if you want to have more than 60 or so. I don't recommend that, by the way. Yeah. No. And even if you already halve the frame rate to 30, which is suitable for a lot of games that are not very action focused, where like card games, strategy games, whatever, where you limit the frame rate to 30, it is amping up the battery life by an hour, for example. So you see the battery consumption, it can go up to like 30 watts or even a little bit more. And with 30 watts, the battery is empty in less than 1.5 hours. Right. If you're playing a game of those, the battery is drained very fast. But if you limit it to 30 FPS, and they have now something in between that's 40 FPS with the latest update, so it's a little bit smoother than 30, but still saving battery. And if you can like get it down to 15 watts or even less, then you get an hour more. You have 2.5 hours. You get 3 hours, 4 hours. And tinkering around with those settings, where you limit the cores, where you limit the frame rate, and tinkering with the settings to get more battery life out of it. So, like, I think like 2 months ago, I've been sick for 2 weeks with the cold. It was not COVID there, but I was lying in bed a lot. And I was playing a game called Cloudpunk. And there I didn't want to get up because my stamina was not there. So I wanted to lay in bed and I wanted to play with the Steam Deck. And I wanted to play as long as possible with the Steam Deck. So I was tinkering around with those settings. And it helped to limit the frame rate to 30 FPS. It still looked smooth enough, but I was able to play like for 3 hours instead of 1.5 hours.
Yeah, and I think that I really do think that a lot of because that was like, I feel like one of the main complaints that I was hearing about the Steam Deck is the battery is abysmal and blah 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 blah. But everybody who's testing the battery and getting really bad battery life are running AAA super taxing games at 60 frames per second, on high settings and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, the battery is comparable to a Switch. I think even the newest version of the Switch, right? The difference is under the hood, the Switch is running games at like 540p. They're running them at 30 frames per second already. And you just can't change that on the Switch, right? The Steam Deck just gives you the opportunity to, you can play it like that and you'll get good battery life out of it. But if you'd prefer, you can jump up those settings. You can set it up to 40 hertz or 40 frames per second, even 60 hertz, 60 frames per second. And your battery life is going to take a dip, but you're just choosing where you want the power to go, right? It's just like, again, it's more of Valve putting the power into the hands of the player instead of just putting them in a walled garden where all the rules are already set, right? If you want to have it just play like a Switch and get Switch battery life, you can, right? But it's not necessary. And that just seems like such a better, I just think having more options is such a better choice for me, right? I mean, I really respect that as somebody who respects my own agency on how I want to be able to play something. And so I really appreciate that. But then also, like you said, Corbin, comes down to the games you play. I found that a lot of times, what they've been selling this thing on is like, it can play Cyberpunk, it can play Red Dead Redemption 2, it can play all these big AAA games. And absolutely, that's a great use case for the system. I find myself playing little fucking indie games that no one's ever heard of. All the indie games that I wish were on the Switch that I bought on Steam years ago that I've been missing, but I've been wanting to just lay in bed and play, but I haven't had the opportunity because I don't want to go up and plug in my gaming PC or sit at my desk where I do all my work at home anyway. It's like now I'm playing all these indie games and I'm getting like 6-7 hours of battery out of this thing. I mean, I'm not just playing those games straight the whole time, but it's like I have not yet even run into a situation where my Steam Deck has run out of battery. Like it's, I'm smart about charging it, and I, when I leave, I plug it in, unless I'm taking it with me, which I found that I have been taking it with me a lot because I've been traveling. But I think, it just depends on what you want to do. And I'm finding the Steam Deck to be an incredible indie device because, there are just, every indie game is on Steam, like
That's
really,
so
like there are so many indies on Switch, and the Switch has turned into an incredible indie machine, and I use it a lot for indies. But it's like the Steam Deck is like even way surpassed that as far as like the indie machine goes, and so I think I would say don't worry about battery life. If you want to play 6 hours of 60 frame per second Cyberpunk on the road, it's not going to happen for you. But nothing was going to do that.
Just talking pure numbers, like Nintendo Switch OLED is looking at the tech specs on their websites, 4.5 to 9 hours. But that's dependent on the game that you're playing.
That's a big swath of difference there.
Right. Yeah. It's a huge window. So like if
the
you're
same
playing,
is true for the Steam Deck.
Exactly.
They say 1.5 hours to 8 hours as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're playing Cyberpunk, or if you're playing some other AAA game, you're probably only going to get an hour and a half max. So you probably can't play Cyberpunk without some type of power on an airplane, on a long airplane trip.
Yeah, unless you drop it down to 30 and lower the frame rate.
You still have the option to get a power bank and plug it in. So and with that you can have like how many capacity you have there and play, and that's still portable. Kind of.
Well, we've been talking for a while, and I think maybe one of the ways we can sort of close this episode, which it's its own big meaty discussion, but is some of the things that maybe the Steam Deck does differently than the Switch, that if they make a new model, we'd like to see, some of which obviously are never going to happen in terms of these customization settings and stuff. But maybe we can say that we want them anyway. Is that fair? Like, what are some of the things, the lessons that a Switch or any handheld could take from the Steam Deck that it's doing right?
Yeah, I compiled a little list here of things that, and most of these I think are completely feasible for Nintendo to do. They would just have to want to put in the effort to implement these features, right? And so I tried to keep this list pretty realistic on, because I mean, for all intents and purposes, as far as I'm concerned, the Steam Deck is the Switch Pro, right? I mean, if you wanted to, you could play Switch games on the Steam Deck, right? There's
doing it.
There is a Switch emulator that runs near flawlessly on the Steam Deck, right? And so I think for all intents and purposes, this really is the Switch Pro that people have been asking for, and I think that for Nintendo to keep up, I think that there are a few things that they should implement that the Steam Deck has already been paving the way forward on. And in no particular order, I have some of these listed out. One of them is a night mode. I think that's something that's been missing on the Switch for a long time. I'm a night person, but that doesn't mean I necessarily want to be. I just have always had issues sleeping, right? And I think a lot of that is I'm laying in bed. I have trouble falling asleep, so I get bored. And so I look at one of my myriad digital devices, right? Pulling up my phone or my Switch if I want to play some games or whatever, right? And so something that I've always wanted is an orange tint filter for the Switch. And I was like, man, I guess that would just be a lot more processing power and they wouldn't be able to do it. Not at all. No, Steam Deck does it no problem whatsoever. There's just a toggle that you can put on that'll turn on your Steam Deck, turn night mode on your Steam Deck until the morning. And it's really robust. Like you can set the amount of the filter that you want, and then you can go in and tweak that even further. That one to me seems
it can't be that much processing power. It's just taking out the color.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
The blue part a little bit, and that can't be that hard. I mean, that's. Yeah.
So the OLED Switch is already doing that with its like vivid mode versus standard mode, right? So it's like it's not a problem. So that's just pure laziness on Nintendo's part. I would love to see that implemented into a pro model of the Switch. Another thing that's great, and this is kind of two-tiered here. Steam obviously has a very robust friend system, chat system, right? All of which is obviously included on Steam Deck. The entire overlay of your friend list and chat and all that kind of stuff is included. And then also included on the device are 2 microphones, one on kind of either side, that basically allows not only for you not to need headphones in order to, with an included mic in order to play online games, but having the 2 microphone array allows for better noise canceling for your environment around you. It cancels out the game audio really well.
The quality of the microphones is amazing. And if you know the Valve Index, their microphones have set the new standard. It's incredible how well they sound. And I think they have put in the technique into the Steam Deck as well, because they are crystal clear. Barely any noise around you is transmitted. It's amazing how good these are. And I mean, Nintendo could even license it from Valve if they want to.
No, they're way too proud to ever do that.
Okay, but they can do it for sure.
We love Nintendo, but they're not logical a lot of the time. Anyway, so I think just obviously, I mean, we've been asking for that from the very beginning. Is any sort of chat feature, any sort of friend feature that goes beyond just friend codes. Right. That's a must for a next generation of the Switch. So I think that's super important. I have here, and this is kind of something we like very barely touched on, but just the under the hood tinkering that you would really get from like modifying the system. You know, like right now you can install like Android on a Switch and you can have your Switch do any number of things. Right out of the bat, you can switch into desktop mode on Steam Deck, and it works amazingly. You know, it just all of the little modification stuff that you would do on any other system, you can just do right out of the box on the Steam Deck. And I was actually pretty amazed at how easy it was and how like kind of fluid it was to navigate desktop Linux with just the trackpad and on-screen keyboard of the Steam Deck. You know, I thought that really, in order to get the most out of desktop mode, I would really need to have a keyboard and mouse plugged in. But using the trackpads and everything was a pretty seamless experience. And I found browsing Firefox and all that kind of stuff to be very, very easy on Steam Deck. So that's a really cool one. Another thing that I think Switch could learn from Steam Deck is controller mapping. And just the complete 100% control you have over what buttons you want to do what.
Switch X and Y, A, and B.
Yes, exactly.
100%, yeah,
exactly. And I mean, and to Nintendo's credit, they have implemented that with some updates over the years, right? Like there is a bit more of a robust controller configuration, like system-wide option on the Switch now, but it doesn't allow for third-party controllers. It doesn't allow for the N64 controller that comes with that you can buy for the expansion pack and stuff like that.
Or like saving profiles for different games or something.
Exactly.
Like that.
Yeah, exactly. And then not only that, like we were talking about earlier, Corbin, is the community profiles that they started rolling out with the Steam controller. So it's like, if you don't like pretty much every single game, even like games that I add third party to the Steam Deck or games that are unsupported on deck, like they'll have community profiles that somebody has made and uploaded to Steam servers. And I usually don't have to fuck with that at all. But then if I want to, I download their profile and then tinker to my exact specifications as much as I need.
What I like to do there mostly is what I'm always afraid of is like, when you run in games, you move forward and then you press it.
Yeah.
I'm always afraid of that. So
on a
being able
handheld,
being able to move forward, but then, for example, pressing another button for doing the run, so I don't have to press the tilted stick.
Yep.
That would be something I'd like to have on the Switch as well.
Yeah.
Because
I refuse to do certain like I refuse to mash
This
out
one
and
doesn't
smash
click
because I
anymore.
don't want to damage my stick.
Yeah, you don't want drift. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And one thing, this is a real quick aside. I just wanted to say this before I forgot, but I will say that let's go ahead and call it ergonomics, right? I think that the ergonomics of the Steam Deck with the actual grips built in, the Steam Deck, there's no getting around it. The Steam Deck is a big, beefy boy. It is a large console, right? And it doesn't feel bad to hold, but it is a big guy, right? But I think the reason they've done that is so it is comfortable to hold for a long period of time, right? So I think having some sort of curvature to the Joy-Cons, adding something that gives it just a little bit more heft would be really good on a pro console. I'll say after playing the Steam Deck for a couple weeks, picking up my Switch, it feels like I'm holding a piece of paper. It's
correct.
Very light.
I just want to say the same thing. I mean, you can go with the Pro controller, the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, but when I was playing a lot with the Steam Deck, and back then, before the Steam Deck was out, I was buying some games even double because I'm a big fan of the game or so. For example, I bought Everspace. I bought on PC. I was even a Kickstarter backer of it, and I bought it for the Nintendo Switch. And I played it on the Switch. But later on, when the Steam Deck was on the horizon, I was like, no, stop buying games that I have already in my Steam library. Because and now, when I play on the deck and come back to the Switch, it feels so weird. It feels like it's so tiny.
It's like a little toy. Yeah. It's amazing.
Bigger hand.
And now it's like even games that I got in like an itch.io bundle, like I don't feel like I need to buy on the Switch if I want to play. You know, it just like feels really good to play handheld. I'm just a big handheld gamer, so I appreciate that stuff. But anyway, moving on, I'll say multitasking is something that I really miss whenever I play Switch now, right? Like just the very basic of having the store open and then switching to a game and then going back to the store and it's exactly where I left it, right? Or if you want to, you can download the flat pack of Spotify in desktop mode, add it to Steam as a non-Steam game, and then you can pull up Spotify within SteamOS as its own app, play some music, then minimize Spotify, move over to a game, boot it up, and now you've got music playing from Spotify while you're playing another game. You know, that's just something that's not possible on Switch, right? And so, and that's where you start running into power problems, right, on the Switch, right? And what they're able to actually get away with. And I think the fact that the Steam Deck is such a powerhouse compared to the Switch allows for that. But if we're talking about a theoretical Switch Pro that has a lot more under the hood, that's something that I would like to see potentially implemented. And if not that, then at least voice, onboard voice chat as some sort of multitasking, I think would be really great on the Switch Pro. I have listed here proper Wi-Fi speeds. I didn't realize until I got a Steam Deck that the Switch is slow as fuck, dude. Like downloading like a 30 gigabyte game on the Switch takes like half a day, and I've got fiber Wi-Fi, I've got really fast Wi-Fi in my house. Games download in like, I think I downloaded Red Dead Redemption 2 in like 10 minutes, something like that. Like that would take all day on the Switch, right? So just the Wi-Fi chip in the Switch like needs to be updated, and seeing what's possible in the Steam Deck makes me realize there's zero excuse that things take so long to download on the Switch. So I'd love to see that. I've got another thing here, and I'm just talking so long here. I apologize, but I think one of the best things about the Steam Deck is that Valve has constantly been updating the operating system, right? And not only are Nintendo updates their operating system too, but it's almost entirely unknown stabilization stuff that's basically, we all know, is them stopping piracy and stopping, tinkerers from going in and blah, 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 right? There's no actual benefit for the end user for the updates that a lot of the stuff that the Nintendo is putting out. Valve
if
is
I remember how long it took them to enable Bluetooth headsets. That took forever.
It took 5 years. Yeah. It's like stuff like that. And it's like, and basically what's been happening with Valve, and it's a different case, but what's been happening with Valve is somebody will make a YouTube video about something that they wish would be in the Steam Deck, and then less than a week later, it's in an update, right? And so it's stuff like that, really paying attention to the community and just putting out stuff that is very user requested, has been like, I've just never seen it in any other, even PlayStation and Xbox. You don't see that kind of customer support with updates like that in any other company. You had something, Patrick?
I just can say, I think it's because it's not like they have to, but they kind of have to, right? And Nintendo,
they have something to prove. They have something to prove right now.
And I think Nintendo has its casual user base, and Valve is going for, because they have to, this niche tinkerer user base, right? And maybe those things have some crossover, and maybe there's things, but I think that's why Nintendo's not going to do some of these things, because they don't have to.
Well, that's why everybody should buy a Steam Deck to make Nintendo sweat a little bit,
and to increase the Linux user base.
Exactly. I have listed on here much better speakers. I think maybe my biggest complaint with the Switch right now is that the speakers are way too quiet. Right? I think that I'm not hard of hearing or anything, but I'll have my Switch turned all the way up, and it's really hard for me to hear a lot of what's happening in games sometimes. And with the Steam Deck, I have it about 50%, and sometimes I have to turn it down.
And they even updated that with the last update with one of the last updates to make the speakers louder.
Yeah.
I think that would be totally possible on the Switch as well.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's not like the speakers on the Switch are bad. I think they just purposefully keep it quiet because they don't want to have to worry about standardizing the volume of everything, right? And they don't want people to blow out their speakers and then them have to deal with it. But it's like the speakers on the Steam Deck are really amazing. I have not yet felt the need to ever plug in headphones, just because the quality of the speakers are so good right off the bat. So I'd love to see on a Switch Pro some better speakers, at least increase the volume, right? Because a lot of times, you're playing especially when it's a portable console, you're going to be playing in environments where there is ambient sound that you're competing with, right? And so having some good hearty speakers that can actually break through some of that noise is very, very important. So that was my list of
that's great
things that I think that the Switch Pro could learn from the Steam Deck.
Well, unless does anybody want to have any final thoughts here about the Steam Deck before we move on? Because I think, there's obviously we could talk about this for a lot longer. There's a lot to be said, but in the interest of having
I can't help but speculate what Steam Deck would look like if it wasn't so hard to find resources or so hard to find hardware. If the tech industry was scalable as it might be, or we expect it should be, how Steam Deck would do given if there were more.
That would be really interesting. I was speculating if they can ship. I was at the end of the year they might reach the 1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But it's now depending on the chip shortage if they can deliver that. I mean, they are ramping up the production, and it looks like they can deliver faster than initially thought. But I just, for fun, placed a second reservation for the Steam Deck to see when it will become available.
Right.
It was also a test because at the beginning it was not available. It was not possible to order a second Steam Deck. Because they said, if you have a game in your Steam library already, you cannot buy it again for yourself. Because they say you have it already in your library. And they realize, okay, you have a Steam Deck already in your library. And that's why we can't sell you another one. That changed. It's possible to buy another one. But I'm still now in October to get it. So,
oh, wow.
I will say this, and I don't want to go too long here because I just did a fucking monologue. But I think that I think that I talk a lot, Corbin, you'll find on this podcast, but I am, the Steam Deck is incredible. And I love it. I've barely touched my Switch since I got it. Right. But not that I don't still love my Switch. I love my Switch. I still love Nintendo. I love Nintendo first party games, but it's it does still very much feel like a work in progress, right? And I'm really excited to see what this leads to if it does catch on, right? And I think it is. I think it will. And I think it's going to be a little bit of a slower rollout, right? But I think that they're disrupting the game right now of the handheld market, and they're really making a stake in this kind of like hardware market for the first time for a major company in a very long time, right? I mean, I think the last really big person to get into the hardware market really was Microsoft, right? Like as far as gaming is concerned. And so I think they're doing a great job. I might be wrong there. Let me know if I'm wrong. But it's like I just think that they have, you can only really go up from here. And if this is where they're already at with this device, I think the future is looking really, really good. And I think the fact that they are shaking things up and they're doing a lot, and like you were saying, Patrick, they're doing it kind of because they have to right now. I think that's good for the industry as a whole, right? And so I just hope that this leads to more and better things for the entire industry. And I'm just glad to see handheld gaming back, right? Everybody was like,
handheld gaming has always been like requested by the people. I mean,
yeah,
where did it start? I still have a Sega Game Gear. I have a Game Boy. I was so happy about the Nintendo Switch when it came out, playing games on the road, whatever.
I love it.
With a color screen and like good games. Not, I mean, even back then the Game Boy games have been good, but yeah, portable gaming is always something people wanted to have. And now at the level we are right now with the Steam Deck, this is setting the new standard. So if Nintendo wants to compete with that, even though Nintendo always said like, yeah, we are not competing with the PC market, we are competing with like people outside playing soccer or so. We want to have that free time. And it's true, they have their own kind of games on the Nintendo Switch, even though with the Switch now it is possible to have like PC games also on the Switch, even though if you compare them one to one, of course they had to like downscale the graphics. The Witcher 3, for example, right? It's if you don't know the Witcher 3 on the PC, and you only have seen it on the Switch, it's looking great. It's looking amazing.
Like you put glasses back on for the first time. You're like, oh my god.
So it does work, and if those games, if Nintendo wants to have also those games, because it's tricky for them to put out always their kind of games, like their Mario games and Zelda games and whatever. I think you're right. They have to amp up their game a little bit.
I hope so.
Well, I think that does it. We have talked about the Steam Deck. I'm sure we could talk longer, but
yeah.
But in the interest of this not being too long, we'll call it there, and we'll take a short break and come back and talk about the games we've been playing recently. Honestly, there's one game I wanted to talk about that I've been playing recently, and that's an Apple Arcade game, actually. Though it is coming to the Switch and Steam later this year, I believe. It's Wildflowers. I started playing this game called the Wildflowers. It's sort of a Stardew Valley-like or an Animal Crossing-like. It's a life sim. But I just wanted to mess around with it, and I have become completely addicted to this game. It's sort of... I mean, honestly, you say Stardew Valley and that you'll get it, right? It's very much like that, but it has, I don't know, more real characters, if you will, in a lot of ways, like sort of real life stuff going on in people's lives that you're talking about. And also I think that the twist or whatever to it is that you're a witch.
So that is
like
quite the twist.
Yeah, so like there's a coven and like you do spells and stuff. But otherwise it is just your typical life sim, you know, you're chopping trees and mining rocks and trying to upgrade things,
doing witch stuff.
Yeah, and I just think it has good balance. Like, you know, I definitely find myself being, I got to go to the mine so that I can mine stuff to go to this person so that I can then do this, and then you're in this loop, and I'm hooked.
Awesome.
But again, Apple Arcade game right now, but it is coming to Steam and Switch, I believe, at the end of this year.
I'll go
That's
next.
mostly what I've been playing. Yeah.
I have been playing. I have purchased Elden Ring, but I'm prolonging actually playing it until like I have a long time and I can play it during a morning or an afternoon. I'm trying to hold out as long as possible so I can just like really enjoy it. It's like buying a cake.
Is it available on the Switch?
No. I
Okay.
bought it on Xbox. It's like buying a cake and put it in your fridge. Be like, I'll come back and eat that cake.
Yo, cold cake is the best cake there is.
Number one cake is cold cake. That is, and I'm talking about a game I haven't even played yet, but I spent money on it. I've been playing a lot more Escape Simulator, which is an escape the room engine. So I played with Chris McKeever a couple weeks ago and some other friends, just playing community built escape rooms, and it's like super fun, and they have daily picks, and so it's fun just to like load up a puzzle game, play for half an hour, and then get back to work. So it's been pretty good. But I am very patient, but I'm also very excited to start Elden Ring. David.
Yeah, I'll go next. As I said, I basically have not been. I haven't really touched my Switch since I got this thing. I mean, went on a trip to Las Vegas, so I've been having a lot of traveling time in order to play games. Like I said, I've been playing a lot of Bejeweled 3. I've been really enjoying that. Samurai Gun 2 game in early access right now. I know a lot of the developers on that game, and a lot of my friends play that game. So I played that a little bit today, but not too much to discuss yet. I'll talk more about that next week. The games I want to talk about this week that I've mainly been playing on the Steam Deck. One has been a great indie game published by Devolver Digital called Heavy Bullets. This is one of my favorite roguelikes on Steam at the moment. It's a first-person shooter game that's kind of got this vaporwave aesthetic to it. It's like a lot of pinks and blues and stuff like that. It's very low poly. But it's a game where you have like 6 bullets in your gun, and they're heavy bullets. So when you shoot them and you kill an enemy, the bullets like stick around, so you have to like go pick them up. So it's kind of all about like ammo management basically, and being smart about how you approach the kind of procedurally generated areas before you move on to the next level. It's an older game. I think it came out like 2014 or something like that. But I'm finding a new life with it on the Steam Deck, and I'm really enjoying playing it on there. A lot of the games that I'm about to talk about, you'll find are games like that that I've played a lot, or I played back in the day, but I'm being reinvested with now that I have this device. Another one that I've been playing is Chrono Trigger on Steam. I bought the Steam version of that recently when it was on sale, and it had a lot of updates for screen size compatibility and stuff like that. So that's been a great travel game. I kind of took a page out of your book, Matt, and was like, hey, I need a game to play on the plane. And that's Matt's plane game. So I've started playing that too. So I've beaten the future section with Robo, and I've gotten through kind of that part of the game, and that's about where I'm at right now. So that's an RPG that I'll be playing a little bit going forward. Played a lot of Chrono Trigger in casinos in Las Vegas when I should have been gambling money, but I'm terrible with money, so I decided to do that instead as a little bit of self-control. And then as far as emulation is concerned on the Steam Deck, I've been playing a lot of GameCube emulation, as I said, and one of the games that I've been playing is called Monkeyed Ball. It's not Super Monkey Ball. It is Monkeyed Ball. And it is a mod of Super Monkey Ball 2 that was made by the people who ended up making the game Rolled Out, which was kind of a spiritual successor to the Super Monkey Ball series. And a lot of the levels in Rolled Out got their start as mods in Monkeyed Ball. And that's been a great one to play on the Steam Deck because Super Monkey Ball runs flawlessly on the Steam Deck. Like it just... You even coming out of like sleep mode or whatever, you just turn it on and like try your hardest to beat a level that's like really difficult in Super Monkey Ball, and you fail a bunch of times, and you're like, oh, gotta go, and then you like put it away and then try it out again. Like it's been an absolute blast. It's like such a smooth experience, and it's super fun. And it's like all new levels, and so like just playing Super Monkey Ball hacks and Super Monkey Ball mods that I have loaded up on my Steam Deck has been a ton of fun. So I'm really enjoying that. And then, lots of little stuff here and there. I kind of been revisiting Celeste and VVVVV, some like hard platformer games that I've had either on itch.io or on my Steam accounts and stuff like that. So I'm really just having a great time, like going back into my backlog and playing a lot of these games that I either haven't played in a long time or never got around to. And so that's a lot of the stuff that I've been playing this past week myself. Corbin, what about you? What have you been playing this past week, man?
Just in the past week, I've played Control. So I have a project going on that's called Pile of Fame, because I don't think it's a shame to buy good games. And that's why I refuse to call it Pile of Shame. And on the Pile of Fame, there is Control on it. Control is a shooter game from Remedy Studios. So it's connected to Alan Wake, if you know that game. Like story plot-wise a little bit. You are an investigator who comes into this Federal Bureau of Control office, and then you have to solve the mystery, what's going on there. And it's very weird. It's a little bit tough. I died already quite often in the game, so sometimes the difficulty just amps up and you're dead and you don't know where that bazooka was firing from or so. It's a fun game though, so the story is interesting. That is the story-based game I'm playing right now. A game where I'm coming back to again and again is No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky just recently got a big update. So I have problems with games that are just sandbox games. And to be honest, No Man's Sky is normally a sandbox game. So you can explore the universe, you can explore planets and build bases and whatever. But there is no real goal behind it. Just spending time in it, exploring stuff. But those expeditions, community expeditions, they give you a goal. They have like milestones to complete and then phases. So 7 milestones are completing a phase, and the complete expedition is made of 5 of those phases. And I like to come back to No Man's Sky with that. You always have to start a new save to start those expeditions. But if you manage to beat the expedition, you get some really cool extra stuff. So at the moment, the Expedition 7 is out, and that's called Leviathan. And what you get at the end will be a big alien ship, a Leviathan, that can be the companionship for your fleet. And the good thing about that is you can redeem that on every other save. So you can have your normal save, but you can go to the anomaly in No Man's Sky, which is a sphere, which is also a multiplayer hub and stuff. And there you can redeem that stuff and can redeem it on every save. And what they changed now with the recent expedition is it's a permadeath mode. So it's kind of hard. I died already 4 times, and I try not to die more often because it would reset all your progress and you have to do all the phases and milestones again. It's fun though. I like space games. And No Man's Sky
finally gamified that game.
And I heard it's coming to the Switch. Or is it out already?
Not yet.
No,
I think they just said that they're putting the finishing touches on the Switch version. So,
and it works great on Steam Deck. It has a verified mark. It's incredible how they optimize it. And that is also one of those things that's really cool about Hello games in general. I mean, if you remember how No Man's Sky started, they didn't have a good start with the promises. No. They were laid into their mouth, even though they just hinted at it, that it might come. But it was then taken as granted, and then it didn't happen, and the community was mad. And they changed the game completely. It's such a great game now. And all the updates are for free. This was worth it so more often. I mean, I bought it twice. I bought it on GOG and I bought it on Steam. But there is sometimes on Twitch those Twitch drops where you get, by watching streamers playing No Man's Sky, in-game items. So after 3 hours, you get a special ship, for example, which is only available during that drop period. Which you can then redeem on every save again. But you have to earn that. And that's only available with the Steam version, not with the GOG version, or with the PlayStation and Xbox as well, but not with the GOG version. And I think back then, that's why I got the Steam version. And now I'm playing the Steam version because it also integrates so well On the Steam Deck, of course, I have not to tinker with it. And they updated that so it works now perfectly on the Steam Deck. It has been working with Proton already before, but there had been some issues with multiplayer joining. So you had to use an older Proton version to start the game, but then could update to a newer version. There's something under the hood with the Windows version the Proton prefix is created with. But that's all fixed. And that's probably due to like Hello Games reaching out to Valve. What do we have to do to get it verified? And it works really well on the Steam Deck as well. It's a lot of fun. It's a good game.
So cool. So cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that does it then for this episode. Thanks, Corbin. Thanks so much for coming on and talking to us about the Steam Deck.
It was a lot of fun.
Thanks to MilkyWay.co, who does our website. Thanks to Corduroy, who does our music. And if you're looking for me, Patrick, online, you can find me as PDYX.
Hey, I'm Matthew on Twitter, MATHYOU.
I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, Corbin? Where can people find you online?
You can find me everywhere on Twitch, on Twitter, on everywhere. Corbin78. YouTube.
Very good. Yeah, YouTube as well.
Yeah.
I've watched some of your streams too. I watched you play a little bit of Control on VOD, so that was very good. Make sure to follow this guy on you and if you'd like to follow you got it. If you'd like to follow our show on social media, we are at Switch Headz on Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Instagram and Facebook. We're online at www.switchheadz.com. And we've got a Discord. Make sure you join our Discord. What a great community we have on there. And a Facebook group as well. The link to both of those will be in the description of this video or podcast, wherever you are ingesting the podcast. Folks, that's going to do it for this episode on the Steam Deck and what the eventual Switch Pro could learn from such a device. We hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again, Corbin. What a blast. We really enjoyed that. We're going to be back next week, ladies and gentlemen. As long as Nintendo doesn't shadow drop a direct on us in the time before, we'll be back with our direct predictions on what we think might be coming out of an E3 direct from Nintendo. So make sure you tune in next week for that episode. That's going to be a special one. We've already recorded it. A little bit of behind the scenes there. We've already done it. So we know what's in that one. That's why I'm talking about it now. But folks, other than that, we're gonna be out here doing episodes for you. So make sure you always tune in. Make sure you follow us and all that stuff. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. We love you guys very much. Stay safe out there. COVID's going around. You try not to catch it, and if you do, make sure you get boosted. Make sure you get that vaccination. I did, and it's been making this whole thing a whole lot easier for me. So, ladies and gentlemen, we love you very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.